Welcome everybody. Thanks for attending this meeting. Just to introduce myself now. My name is Cătălin Tudose. I am currently working at Luxoft Romania. Maybe you know the company because it is also present in Poland, at least in Krakow, in Warsaw, and in Wrocław. I'm currently acting inside Luxoft Romania as a Java and web technologies expert. I am also an author at Pluralsight and at Manning. I have recently published a book, JUnit in Action, at Manning. And I'm very glad to be here. I told you that I have very good connections with Poland. I've been there about 20 times in a few cities. I conducted courses, especially in Krakow and Wrocław. I had connection with Warsaw and with Gdańsk. Now I'm extending my Polish connections with Rzeszów. So I'm really happy to be here. Our talk will be about JUnit5 and about using JUnit5 features in practice and how to move from JUnit4 to JUnit5 and take the most benefit of the newly introduced features in JUnit5. And I would like to thank to the people that facilitated this meeting, to Łukasz Kuździo and to Andrzej Grzesik. Let's start with where we come from the JUnit4 architecture. Probably you are very familiar with this JUnit4. We used it in practice in your tests. It is very popular. It is most likely the most used, or it was the most used third-party library in Java projects, and it brought a lot of benefits. But during the time, it was proven that it was also having some shortcomings. And these shortcomings are mostly due to its architecture. JUnit4 had a monolithic architecture. So if you needed to use JUnit4 in your projects, you just had to use this single JUnit jar and start using it. That was simple, but it was also coming with some disadvantages because everyone was using one single jar, and that was not so convenient. Especially that this jar was not designed to be used by everybody. So if you are using it, you are using through the API. But if the developers of IDEs or the developers of the build tools were using the JUnit jar, this JUnit jar was not designed to be used by those tools. And the developers from the IDEs and from the build tools had, in most cases, to get into the internals of the JUnit jar and use reflection in order to do their work. And that was not convenient. First of all, of course, you are breaking the encapsulation, but it was also a break in the development of JUnit. Because if everyone was getting inside your internals, inside your private things, then your evolution possibilities are not so big. And here came JUnit5 and said, we would like to change the things. We would like to understand and fix the shortcomings of JUnit4. And now we come with this modular architecture. And the JUnit5 proposed modular architecture is providing 3 modules. They are called JUnit Platform, JUnit Jupyter, and JUnit Vintage. What are they doing? You may ask yourself, what are they doing? JUnit Platform is especially for running the tests, for the engine, and for interacting with the tools like the IDEs and the build tools. JUnit Jupyter is in fact the API that we are using for our tests. You may ask yourself, where does this JUnit Jupyter name come from? Jupyter is the 5th planet of the solar system. At the same time, is the biggest one. And this is the justification. We have JUnit5, and we named this module by the name of the fifth planet. And there is also JUnit Vintage, which is a module that makes sure that we can still work with old tests written in JUnit4 or JUnit3. And this modular architecture is the big step that favors everything that we are going to discuss now. It is at the basis of the evolution of JUnit5. Have to understand this big step, but of course, we are going to focus for our meeting on more usability of the JUnit5 features in practice. And in order to do this, I prepared here a small application, has some business logic. It is intended to manage flights and passengers that are joining these flights. And we are saying here that we have a few types of flights, and we have a few types of passengers, and the company that is managing these flights and these passengers is providing some policy to allow passengers to join, to be added to the flight, or to be removed from the flight. And we have here some small schema about how this company is managing this policy of adding a passenger to a flight. We say here, if you would like to add a passenger to the flight, first have a look if the flight is economy. If the flight is economy, yes, we approve the request so everyone can join an economy flight. Otherwise, if the flight is not economy, we take a look at the status of the passenger. And we ask ourselves, is the passenger VIP? If the passenger is a VIP, we approve the request. Otherwise, if it is a regular passenger, meaning no, a regular passenger cannot join a flight that is not economy. And we have here a policy for removing a passenger from a flight. Still, we ask ourselves, is the passenger VIP? If the passenger is VIP, once he or she has joined the flight, he or she cannot be removed any longer. We can approve the request for a passenger to be removed from a flight only if he or she is not a VIP. And this is our simple business logic. And I will show how to work with it in practice. I prepared here some implementation. I will start with project testing these features in JUnit4, and I will move to JUnit5, emphasizing how we can benefit from these new features. Just to quickly show what is here, we have this abstract flight class, has an ID of the flight and a list of passengers. It is extended by economy flight with the policy of adding and removing a passenger, and by business flight with the policy of adding and removing a passenger. And the passenger is described here by the name and by the fact if he or she is a VIP. Good. Let's have a look at the tests. So we are seeing here the first test written, as I was saying, in JUnit4. And I was saying that I will keep this application as a witness, and I have a copy of it. I will start working on it just to explain what these tests are about. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 tests. Why? Because we have 2 types of flights, business and economy, and we have 2 types of passengers, regular and VIP. And you see here that we are saying test economy flight regular passenger, test economy flight VIP passenger, test business flight regular passenger, test business flight VIP passenger. We have 4 tests because we have 2 flights multiplied by 2 types of passengers, and we have a total of 4 tests. Let's have a look at how we run this once I started the execution of the tests. They run here, and we see that all pass. Okay, this is good, but even if if things of this kind were used for a long time, let's take a close look at it and see a few shortcomings. Here you see how the tests are displayed. So you see the name of the method, of the test method that was executed. It is a method annotated here with test. And you say, okay, what is this one? Test business flight VIP passenger. You have to hard code into the name of the method. You have to hard code something to tell what you're doing. And we still do not know here what we expect. We may say here, should do this and that when business flight VIP passenger. But this will make the name of the method more lengthy. That's not nice. You have to hard code inside the names of the methods what you are doing if you want your test to be expressive and to know a little at least about what they are doing. And what we see here is that we have assertions after assertions. Of course, we need to verify a few things, not only one thing. In most cases, you would like to verify more than one thing, but the disadvantage here is that if, for example, this line of code fails, this assertion fails, the other ones will no longer be executed. Let's say that here I'm saying false, and here I'm saying true. So I have two things that do not correspond to my expectations. And if I run this test again, okay, I see that this one is failing, and I'm told here expected false, actual true, but I do not know anything. You notice that I changed here two things. It failed here. From now on, nothing was executed. These are a few shortcomings that we wanted to emphasize in our road to introduce JUnit5 and take full benefit of its nice features. Let's execute this once again and make sure that I leave this in a good state. And I will go here. I have the same, absolutely the same application here. And I will start migrating it to JUnit5 and take the full benefit of everything that is provided by the nice features of JUnit5. First of all, I need to introduce the dependencies of JUnit5. I am commenting out the dependency of JUnit4 and introducing these ones. Of course, I prepared them previously, and I would like to remove these ones here. Let me bring the new dependencies here. Import class, import class. So you see that now, instead of JUnit org JUnit test, I have this org JUnit Jupyter API test, which is in fact the JUnit5 annotation, but it belongs to a different package, and have the assert equals method that also belongs to a different package and to a different method, to a different class. Let's quickly run this just to see that we are going the right way. For the moment, we just changed one annotation and one method, but there is much more to do. I was saying that we would like to assert everything. We would like not to stop here at this line if it fails, but would like to execute everything. And JUnit5 is providing this nice assert all method. I will introduce it here. Let me import static method, assertions. I will introduce here the lambda expressions. I'm using here the idea new feature about this multi-caret. I pressed Alt and Shift, and then I moved the caret. So when I wrote here parentheses and arrow, they were propagated to all lines. And this is a nice idea feature. Let me do this. So I'm quickly changing a little the code. You see how this assert all looks like. We have here a series of lambda expressions that were introduced by Java 8. Just to mention that the minimum Java requirement for running JUnit5 is Java 8. And here, we would like to assert everything from here. If we run this, let's run this test. Okay, it runs fine. Let's break it just the way I was breaking my previous test. But I break it in two places. And let's run it again. Of course, it is failing, but if I look here, I say comparison failure, expected false, true, and still expected to, but was 1. So the new assert all method from JUnit5 is allowing us to make multiple assertions and not to stop at the first assertion. Let me redo the code, and I will use this assert all in all the other methods. So I press Alt Shift just to let you know. I move the caret here. And I am introducing this code, parentheses and arrow. Okay, great. Assert all here. And again, I'm using the multi-caret, Alt Shift. Oh. Okay. Just 1 minute, please. We would like to have a really, really nice and efficient code with JUnit5. Just to put everything for all methods. And assert all. Alt Shift. Parentheses, arrow. And here, and I'm pressing Ctrl-Alt-Alt to align the code. So I propagated this assert all functionality to all the 4 methods that are testing. Let's see that we are going the right direction, I will run this airport test once. Okay, we are having green results, green tests, but of course, we still have a lot to do. Just to remind you that for the moment, we just took advantage of this assert all method that may provide multiple assertions and will not stop at the first failure. But there are more features to use here. JUnit5 comes with nested tests. So we may have just like nested classes, as we have a nested class inside another class in Java, we may have a test inside another test. When were we using nested classes in Java? In general, we are using nested classes in Java when those classes were having logical connection. They were strongly related. And here we may think, probably we may do better. We may organize better our tests because there are some relationships between them. We have two types of flights, we have two types of passengers. And I will write here a nested test. I will call this class economy flight. Yes. And what I can see here is, okay, let me take economy flight test, not to overlap with the economy flight from the business logic. And I will take this test from here. These ones. I will move them here. And what we see here is that we have an economy flight here, and we have an economy flight here, the same. We can make it a member of the class. What would you say about this? I would introduce it here. I would say private flight, economy flight equals new economy flight of 1. And let's run the tests, how they look like now. We have this nested test, but we can do even better. I can write here display name. I can take advantage of this display name method annotation. And I would say here, given an economy flight. But what about introducing here two more classes? Nested classes at the second level. So I will have nested class regular passenger test and nested class VIP passenger test. And I will take this method from here. I will also take this method from here and put it into the VIP passenger test class. And I would like to benefit even more from this display name. I will annotate this nested class with display name as well, and I will say when we have a regular passenger, and I will annotate this test here, and I will say display name, then you can add and remove him from the flight. And let me move this one from here just to make it a member of the nested class. Maybe we can reuse it, who knows. And here I will do the same, a member of the nested class, and I will say here display name when we have a VIP passenger, display name, then you can add him but cannot remove him from the flight. This is our business logic, and we are expressing it through this display name annotation. Let's see how tests are looking like now. Let's execute. Great. It works, but not only that it works, but this part that we modified and we made it take full benefit of the JUnit5 features, you see that can be read fluently here in English. Given an economy flight, when we have a VIP passenger, then you can add him but cannot remove him from the flight. Given an economy flight, when we have a regular passenger, then you can add and remove him from the flight. So you can read it in plain English, or in, if you like, in any other language, in Polish, for example, just to tell you that this display name annotation is really nice. It accepts here any text. It may accept, of course, even the Polish diacritics, emojis, whatever you would like. And we would like to emphasize here one thing. This given, when, then keywords are in fact keywords from a development technique that is called behavior-driven development. Maybe you know about it. It uses scenarios in order to express the business logic. Given something, so a precondition, when we do some action, then we are expecting something. Let's do something more. It was not so compulsory, but JUnit5 allows methods, testing methods, to be private, package private, not necessarily them to be public. Let's execute again. All right. Let's quickly introduce this functionality in the second part of this test, so that we have a really, really nice application that is working with JUnit5, nested, class. This one was economy flight test. This one will be business flight test. And here, class regular passenger test. Also, I have to make it nested because it is a nested test. I will have this flight here, as a private member here. I will have here Mike as a private member here. And I will move this test from here to here. I can remove this public just to say here, display name given a business flight. Display name on this nested class. When we have a regular passenger, and display name on this test. Then you cannot add him to the flight. And I can add here another nested class, class VIP passenger test. I will take this last test from here. I will make this flight as a member of the class. I will annotate this newly added nested class when we have a VIP passenger. And I will finally annotate this one will disappear from here. I will move James here. Private. Business flight test regular. Okay. And I will say here display name. Then you can add him but cannot remove him from the flight. Let me see if everything looks fine. Business flight. Let's run this test, this suite. Good news, it is running. But even better news, we can read them fluently. Given a business flight, when we have a VIP passenger, then you can add him, but cannot remove him from the flight. You will immediately understand the business logic. And no need to hard code here big things. This test business flight regular passenger and the name of the other methods remain this way because I moved them, but you can eventually choose other shorter names. You will express what you intend that method or that class to do with this display name annotation. Let's go back here and see where we started from. So you see how these tests were looking like in JUnit 4. Let's run them with code coverage, just to fully understand that we are on the right track and we didn't miss anything when we moved. Okay, here it was 100%. In practice, and when you have a more complicated business logic, of course, it will be usually impossible to reach 100%. But for our business logic, we're able to get this 100%. This is how these methods were looking like. And if I go here, let's run this again, this time with code coverage. So we didn't miss anything. It's 100% code coverage, but look again where we started from and where we arrived. And I think this is a big step forward about how you can write your tests, how you can use the expressiveness of JUnit5. Of course, other things that I emphasize here about how to make this migration from replacing the dependencies, replacing the imports for annotations and for methods, for assertion method, but also these really nice features of nested tests and display name annotation. I think it's time now. This is the first part of our discussion, of our presentation. I'm ready for the first session of questions. Please go ahead. And then I'll move to present even more features of JUnit5 and to compare and contrast them to JUnit4, just to see how we can make the big step. I have here a question, if it is possible to set assert all features globally to all tests instead of doing it manually with Lambda expressions. No, for now, no. You have to go at the level of the method and at the level of the testing method and to write by yourself assert all and whichever assertions you would like to. Maybe for other future versions. Have here another question. Are instances of nested classes shared by all test methods in given test classes, or are they instantiated for each method? So these nested classes are just like the nested classes in Java. In particular, they are test classes. But if you ask yourself, here, this class is known here, yes? And you ask yourself, can you write here economy flight test A, B, C? A, B. Yes, it is known here because it is declared here. If I write here, yes, I can use it, but it's not so useful. I know it inside another nested class, but in practice, I do not see many reasons for you to use a class of this test inside another class or inside another method. Here, the reason for this nested test is to help you shape some relationship between the tests. Okay, let me go back here. If test method can break state of embedded fields, what you have to know is that here, when you execute one test, one one new test will be created for each of the methods to be executed, one instance of the test. But you can instruct JUnit5 to create one, let's see, test instance. It may be, you see, life cycle per class or life cycle per method. By default, it is life cycle per method. If you use life cycle per class, yes, it is possible, as you have only one instance of a class of this kind. It is possible that you use such a field from here in a method, and then in the next, at the execution of the next method, you are going to find it in a or in a changed state, let's say, maybe not compromised. But if you use the default test instance, which is life cycle per method, then you do not have a danger of this kind. I have here something more. Okay. Here, how much slower are tests with nested classes versus without nested classes? It is visible slower. This is a good question, and most likely I should make some benchmarks in order to be able to clearly answer such a question. Visible, it is not visible from what I made execution, so I didn't feel it. But in order to provide some very good answer, I should better do some benchmarks and keep them for another session probably. So not visible, but the best way to appreciate it would be through benchmarks. No more questions? I can move to the... Just a moment. Very interesting presentation and apologies for a kind of a topic question, but would you please be willing to schedule some light on your academic background and how it influenced your professional software engineer career? Okay, no problem about this. If you asked me, I am in software engineering field for more than 20 years now. What's my professional background? I have graduated Faculty of Computer Science in Bucharest, here where I lived for many years. And I have a PhD in computer science since 2006, so it's almost 15 years now. But I also have a long time experience in development. For these more than 20 years that I dedicated to software development and to software engineering, more than 15 are dedicated to Java. For about 7 years now, I am fully dedicated inside Luxoft to conduct courses, to develop courses, to provide some mentoring at the level of projects. But this was done after I made my studies and after that I was a developer or a team leader in projects. So if you ask yourself, what should you do in order maybe to do similar things? First of all, I should advise you that you have a good academic background and a good experience at the level of development. If you would ask me how much experience you should have, I would say at least 5 years in developing software at the level of projects. Usually, the software development is full of young people. So if you are now a young graduate during your first years and you are asking yourself about what should I do in my future, I would say at least a few years 5, 7, 8 years to dedicate to development. And then when you have a very good understanding of how things are going, you may think about other things. I'm not sure if this answers, this is what you were looking for or anything else. Okay. May I move to the second part? Here, I prepared for you some more. So one target for ourselves is now to get most benefit from JUnit5. And we would like to get the most benefit by comparing and contrasting it with JUnit4, because on one side, I'm expecting that you have at least some experience with JUnit4. Then you will see the big evolution between JUnit4 and JUnit5. And last but not least, there was a questionnaire that Łukasz provided to you before our meeting, and there was someone was saying, I would like to know how to evolve, how to migrate from JUnit4 to JUnit5. Let's see a few things. Just to let you know, there are many JUnit5 features. I selected for you a few ones, especially when we can put them in comparison, in contrast with JUnit4, just to realize the big benefit of this big step. What does JUnit4 what was providing? We have parameterized tests in JUnit4. We have parameterized tests in JUnit5, but they look really different. Let's see what JUnit4 was doing to parameterize some tests. We have this simple class as input for our test here, string counter. You see, it is just taking a test, splitting it by spaces, and providing how many words are there. And we would like to do some testing. Of course, we would like to do some testing on some input. And this is the one input. We have here check 3 parameters. Output, expected output is 3. JUnit in action, this is the title of my book. Expected output 3 parameters. This method annotated with this parameters annotation plays the role of a factory for input for tests. This is the test, you see. What do we need to do in order to run a parameterized test in JUnit4? We have to annotate it run with parameterized class. So we have this JUnit4 runners. We have to have this factory method, which serves as an input for all the tests, and to write here code. And if I execute now this test, okay, I'm happy. Say here, parameterized text is check 3 parameters. Parameterized text is JUnit in action. Let's see how JUnit5 is doing it. Just to let you know that JUnit5 is much more flexible, and it provides us a few alternatives about how to run parameterized tests. We need some source for running the test, and we can, first alternative is to have it as value source. So we have this test, and we annotate it as parameterized test. And here in this value source annotation, we are directly introducing the arguments. And at execution, these arguments will be taken and injected here. You see here that this test was not having any parameter. Here, this test is having parameter, it is a parameterized test, and this value source is telling us what to be injected here. Let's have a look how this class looks like. I wrote here 39 lines. How this class is looking like here. Have here more, because we have this comments here, but the class is only about 15 lines. Here, I did not insert that comment. So you see that it is a much, much shorter class. One test, one private object, and the annotations. Let's run it. And it is even more expressive. You see here the arguments. We're not able to see the arguments when we were running this class. Here you see check 3 parameter JUnit in action. Here you see test count. This is much less significant. But we can have more. We can provide as arguments of methods an enum. Here we have this enum with 3 instances. And when I say here, parameterized test enum source text class, it will mean that it will execute this method. Injecting here, you see this method still has argument, injecting here each of these 3 instances. Or I would say, hey, I would like you to use enum source, but not for all instances, but only for these 2 ones. Or I would like you to use this enum, but I would like you to exclude this instance. So very flexible. Let's see it in action. You see, I can immediately realize what was done and for which parameters. But we can do even more with parameterized tests in JUnit5. I can provide here a CSV source test. Parameterized test like in the other test, but here instead of value source or enum source, I have CSV source. And these comma separated values will say, okay, here this parameter is injected here and expected here is injected just like this. See, very, very short test. And you see the arguments that were provided at a glance. Or I can provide an input CSV here. I prepared it here. This will make our test even more flexible because if you will change this test, you will no longer need to go at the level of the code. You will just change this separate input CSV. No code recompilation, just the input provided. And you see here the execution. So we compared the parameterized tests between JUnit4 and JUnit5. But there is still more. Categories in JUnit4 have been replaced with tags in JUnit5. Let's see how these categories were looking like in JUnit4. We would like to divide, organize our tests so that we say this is a bunch of tests to be executed in some conditions, and this is another bunch of tests to be executed in some other conditions. What did we need? What did we need to do in JUnit4 to work with these categories. You see, we are creating here two interfaces, individual test and repository tests. And here I would say this is a test that belongs to both categories, individual tests and repository tests. And this one is a test that belongs only to the individual test category. And if I want to run this, I need to write these suites, separate suites. I say here, this is a test that will exclude these categories. This is a test that will include these individual test categories, and this is the test that will look here into these test classes, but will include only repository tests. Let's run this one. So it was looking inside this class and run only the second one, because this one is only with individual tests, while this one is belonging both to individual tests and repository tests, and so on. It works, but let's note that we wrote here two interfaces and two test classes, and here for each combination that we wanted, we wrote a suite of tests. Pretty much code to write. And here comes JUnit5 and says, I would like to make it shorter, quicker. I have these tags. What do I need here? I'm still testing these two classes. You see, I am tagging here this test with individual and this test with tag repository. This is in the spirit of recent way Java works with annotations, but how to use them? I can use this if I go here and I say, let's run here. Just a moment. JUnit. I'll call it tagged, and I say test kind tag, and let's say tag expression individual. I can save it here, and I will run now only the tag test with individual. It ran only this test. I didn't create any interface, a suite of tests, whatever. I just said this is a test tag with this, or this is a test tag with that. Or I can go here again in run, edit configuration, and here I would say, instead of individual, I would say repository. Okay, and now I see that only the repository tests are executed. You may ask yourself, should I do it only from the IDE, or if I want to do it from the build, can I do? Yes. Let's have a look here. You see, for the moment, I commented out here for the Maven Surefire plugin. I commented out this configuration. So if we run mvn clean install from here, let me take this absolute path, mvn clean install. Let's see what's run here. So just to quickly remind that here, no special configuration. Okay. Let's wait a little for this test to be executed. So it's here, okay, I run 28 tests. But what if I say here, let's configure something and you should run individual tests and exclude repository tests. Run again, mvn clean install. It's running only that single individual test from all that suite of 28. But what if I would like to say here repository? I can use them comma separated. I have a question. Let's see. Let's finalize this, and I will get back to the question. You see that it is running here 3 tests, the individual ones and the repository ones. And I may have here any combination. I can go here at the level of the configuration of this Maven Surefire plugin, and I can do whatever I want from the build tool. Okay, let me remake this and answer now this question because it's really appropriate to tell something about running tests in parallel using JUnit5. By default, these tests are run one after the other. I know that there is some work for at the level of the Surefire plugin to run tests in parallel, but there are still some problems from my knowledge. I saw something on the net not so much time before, and it was still an open issue about running this test in parallel. So it's still open at the level of the developers. Maybe they made some progress, but I'm not so aware of this. Let me go back here to what we have here. Parameterized test tags. We still have repeated tests and rules from what I prepared here to demonstrate. Repeated test, it is something new. You have this repeated test annotation, and it will tell you how many times you should repeat this test. And what we would like to do here, we would like to repeat it 5 times, and we would like to demonstrate that 5 times if we add something into the set, there will still be only 1 entrance in the set. If we add here 5 times an integer to a list, at the end we'll have 5 positions in the list. It may be useful to repeat sometimes the test. Let's see how it looks like. You see here that we also have some meta information, because this is what we specified here. We have this current repetition that it is resolved by the runner, and it will insert the current repetition here. And say here, the list contains one element, the set contains one element, the list contains two elements, the set contains one element, and current repetition is the number of elements that are expected at the level of the list. JUnit5 will come and inject these things. All right. And I still prepared the demonstration about using the rules and the better alternatives that we have now with JUnit5. Have here the rule with temporary folder. Sometimes when we execute something, we would like to have a temporary folder to create something there. And when we end the test, we expect what was there to disappear. And at the level of JUnit4, I needed to write here rule temporary folder and use it here. Say this folder will be created. We'll have a file inside it. Maybe I will use this file, however I will need it. At the end of this test, it still exists, but at the end of the suite, see here, this after class, it should no longer exist. Let's run this test. Okay, great. Let's see how we do this in JUnit5. This is quicker, shorter. I just have to come here and annotate with tempdir, pass tempdir, and instead of having a temporary folder like this, it will be annotated with tempdir. Here, okay, I have this temporary directory, and inside it, I will make my created file.txt that I need. Let's run this. I have a question, I will get back to it. So you see, I will finalize with this temp there. You see, we are getting same result, but with less code here. I write here no more rule. I write this temp dir. Just to make some another comparison here, this is more straightforward, but because we're here just to notice it, this after class annotation from JUnit4 has been replaced with after all annotation in JUnit5. Just this is something more straightforward, and we do not insist on it. Have a question here. Do you know any solution to set up feature that repeats failed tests with few tries before it really fail? Probably you may provide some timeout there. I did not insert here this timeout demonstration, but you may provide some to some tests. You may provide some timeout for the test and to repeat inside that timeout. And when that timeout expires, you should say, okay, I really failed. This is what I'm thinking about, but I did not include here into my demonstration. Okay, and we have here Still one more thing about treating exceptions. At the level of JUnit 4, we needed to write this rule. I'm expecting some exception. You see here that this method is already deprecated, but we use it for demonstration. We initialize this rule, expect the exception, and whenever I run this test, and when I run this test, I change the expected exception and the expected message. I'm trying to extract square root from -1, and of course I'm expecting illegal argument exception, or I am trying to divide 1 by 0, and I'm expecting arithmetic exception. Let's see this in action. Okay. And here, it was replaced with assert throws. And here, I'm saying I'm expecting this lambda expression to throw this illegal argument exception, or I'm expecting this lambda expression to throw this arithmetic exception, and I'm expecting the message from this throwable to be this one or this one. You see that the code is still a little shorter. We don't need this rule here or to reinitialize it every time. Let's run this. So we have similar effects, but more efficiently, more straightforward with less code. And these were the features that I wanted to compare and contrast with you. To let you know a few more things, I was telling that I have recently authored this JUnit in Action 3rd edition book, published November 2020. Here you may find all the details of the new features of JUnit5 and much more. You will find chapters about working with mock objects, about test-driven development with JUnit5, behavior-driven development with JUnit5 and Cucumber, for example, and JBehavior also, about how to implement a test strategy pyramid, with JUnit5. And also, I authored a few courses here at Pluralsight. From the 6 courses and the 1 project that I authored, 4 of them are dedicated to automated testing. You see here TDD with JUnit5, Java BD fundamentals, implementing a test pyramid strategy in Java, and migrating from the JUnit 4 to the JUnit 5 testing platform. So as we are by the end, I'm still expecting some questions, if you have. No, you have finished all your questions during the session. In this case, thank you for being here. Really nice to be able to run this presentation for the Rzeszów Java user group.
Thank you, Cătălin. And one more question to you. Could you please choose the best question which we can reward?
I've been thinking about this, yes. But first I didn't follow the names. Was there any my first trial will be, I would say, I had pretty good questions. What is the best way for organizing test in test class? Let me answer this one as well. I would say that you should organize test in test class whenever with nested whenever there is a logical relationship between the tests. So whenever you are able to first to connect conceptually the tests, and also to share things like, you see, this private economy flight is shared both by this class and by this class. So think about these two things, about the logical connection between tests and about how you can share some internals of your tests between different classes. Let me have a look here. And I will also have questions came to me both on the chat and on the question and answers section. Let me review all of them because they are scattered into places now. I will go by Piotr Kluj because he asked two questions and both of them were really interesting.
Okay, so Piotr, please send to me your email address via Meetup or via Facebook. I will share with you.
If you want to get in touch with me, you have here my contact on Twitter. You may also easily find me on LinkedIn. So if you are still interested about things to discuss with me, you may find me really easily.
Okay, so once more, Cătălin, thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Hope to see you next time in Rzeszów.
In Rzeszów, I don't have plans now. So I was telling that I visited a big part of Poland, from the north to Gdańsk to Warsaw, to the west to Kraków to Poznan, but no destination for the eastern side so far.
So we will organize something for sure.
For now, taking into account the current world condition and also the distances, we may still organize online, but maybe in the future also to be there. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Łukasz. I also want to mention again Andrzej Grzezik, who made the connection to this Java user group, to the Rzeszów Java user group. And we'll keep in touch if you want, and maybe we'll meet at, as Łukasz was saying, at the next presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice and lovely evening and weekend.
Have a nice weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.